Hey, comic friends. It is Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. I am here back with my hopefully weekly comic book countdown. This time looking at a stack of 10 comics that came out this past Wednesday. And there was one comic in the mix that I did not read, Batman 96, because I am 7 issues behind on Batman. I fall behind a lot of comics because of the coronavirus, but Batman I fell behind even before then because I couldn't get a hold of Batman 89 for a long time, which meant I didn't want to read the rest until I got Batman 89. I do have it now, but I'm still procrastinating getting to it. Batman makes me think I'm in the midst of reading online right at this moment, or right around in the last hour or so, about DC laying off a lot of people, and at least websites like Bleeding Cool implying there may be a DC implosion coming, which isn't surprising in the sense of ever since they've been bought from AT&T, I wondered whether some big changes were coming down the road. They already have made some big changes in terms of distribution and whatnot. And the current thinking on Bleeding Cool, again, may or may not be right, is that this is going to mean smaller direct market efforts on DC parts and bigger into bookstores and digital. We'll see if that's the outcome. It does seem like a lot of editors got laid off. So less editors, you would think, means less comics. And I like DC Comics, like the Black Label books, and I mean, I do like Batman, and I'm sure Batman will stay around, but I like the Hawkman book I've been reading, and Justice League Dark, and there's other the Black Label stuff, as I mentioned, and some other miniseries I've recently wrapped up that were really good. I would like to see more of things like that, like the Freedom Fighters, for instance. So anyway, other than that, it was a good week for comics with me, and only my number 10, my lowest on the list, is one that maybe I didn't get enough satisfaction out of. So everything else, 9 out of 10 comics were a great time for me. But I will still rank them in my subjective way, based totally on how much I enjoyed them in my reading, and maybe a little bit in my thinking back on them, because I couldn't even figure out. Nor often number 1 or number 1 and 2 and 3 maybe jump out at me, but it was very hard for me to rank these other than my very lowest ones. So with that said, the one that came in at number 10, it was not a bad comic, was Bad Mother, a new Bad Mother issue 1 of 5, a new comic from a new publisher, AWA Upshot. But it's not like a small publisher in the sense of they've got Axel Alonso is one of their editors. That's a picture of him. That's why I showed that. And Axe to Grind. And they have other big name people from comics publishing involved. Bill Jemas. And the artist here is Mike Deodato Jr., who was, at least used to be, kind of a big art star at Marvel. And I liked a lot of his work there. And the writer, for some reason her name sounds familiar, and I don't know why, Christina Faust. But I wonder if she is a TV writer who's dabbled a little bit in comics, because I feel like I've seen her name somewhere. And this is, it's an okay comic. It's a crime noir comic. I kind of wish it was drawn. I don't think the Mike Deodato artwork worked for me in this case. I don't know if he's changed his methods. A lot of it seemed, some kind of form of digital tracing, or, where they make these digital models and then they draw over them or something like that. I don't know for sure, but it had kind of a, I don't know, somewhat artificial look to me. And the colorist, Lee Lowridge, who I usually like a lot, somehow added to that feeling. So I really missed someone like Sean Phillips' kind of artwork would have fit this story much better. Story of a mother who's getting drawn into a world of crime, basically, that through her daughter, but also as a bystander to a shooting in a convenience store. So I liked it, and I might even, if it's there in the comic book shop, and I don't have too many comics that week, I might continue picking it up, or I might read it in trade. So I didn't hate it, but it didn't wow me. It didn't click with me quite right, and it didn't help that the creator, Christina Faust. That's her there. Right here. Oh, no, I'm using my wrong finger. Anyway, you see the woman there. She brags in her editorial matter that she's never wanted children and does not have children, a 50-year-old woman without children, which is fine. But I don't know if that's something to make you seem more cool when you're writing a story called Bad Mother. And she also said, which is also kind of cool, that she wanted to do a story about the kind of woman who's reached a certain age where, well, she used a more rude way, but where men are not drawn to her anymore. And it does start with a scene of her having trouble trying on pants at a department store. However, she still seems relatively attractive to me. So maybe that's my very advanced years. So yeah, she's not as young and thin, but she still looks like she's going to be played by a movie star or something, an aging movie star. And in fact, I wondered a bit if this had a bit in the nature of a screenplay that hasn't yet got made into a comic book. Then I liked much more, but still had some issues with Undiscovered Country, mostly with the art, which is passable, but I'm spoiled. A lot of art that I get in the comics that I like really, knocks my socks off. And this, I think this artist can do better than this. Cameron Coley, I feel like I've seen better by him, and it's colored by one of my favorite colorists, Matt Wilson. But Matt Wilson doesn't, well, in my imagination, he doesn't seem inspired by Cameron Coley art, and so his colors don't feel very inspired either. And there's a certain lack of detail. I don't know, or maybe it was leaving a lot of room for the colors. It is interesting that in this flashback, this president of the United States looks like Clint Eastwood. My other kind of issue with this book at the moment is it's this wild fantasy / science fiction, and it just feels like there's too much unexplained stuff. I did read 2 issues in a row, so and it's interesting. Issue 6 is like 30 pages long in terms of the art, the pages with actual art and story, and this issue is 22 pages long, which is fine. They're independent comic makers, and they can make each issue as long as they want. But I also wondered if Cameron Coley was running out of time to do his drawings or something. I mean, that seems unlikely. But the art seemed better in issue 6, although still not super to my taste. But there's all kinds of just weird things that I'm having trouble buying into. Like, for instance, there's some secret entrance in this wall owned by this dictator of this section of the United States. And even he doesn't know what's on the other side. I don't know. It's just everything's a little too mysterious in Undiscovered Country, and I don't totally trust that they're going to make me believe it all by the end. But I'm still enjoying the ride. It's probably something that could never really be done in a movie or convincingly, because it's so phantasmagorical and crazy. Although, did I read it had been optioned, so maybe I'm talking out of my butt. Another one that frustrates me a little bit with its sense of reality is The King of Nowhere. And this one I actually read 3 issues of. So this is issue 4, which came out this week. And I got the really nice cover B by Martin Morazzo, the artist from Ice Cream Man. And this is written by the writer of Ice Cream Man, W. Maxwell Prince. Um, sounds like nobility. And I love this cover, but the art and usually I want art by covers by the artist. The art on the inside is interesting, but I feel like it doesn't quite click with this story. I like Tyler Crook's art, but I feel like he has yet to find the perfect vehicle for his artwork. I don't know what that would be. The story itself of this village of, really weird people, one guy with an upside down face, people with multiple eyes, people with one eye, fish heads, a person who's become a tree. All, again, fantasy kinds of stuff. And to have it revealed that it's part of some kind of radiation experiment by the government just doesn't really work for me, especially in the kind of loose, sloppy way that the story has been unfolding. And it is weird, the Ice Cream Man, that Maxwell Prince is so known for, is so tight in its short storytelling. Yes, it asks you to buy into completely impossible things, but it doesn't try to explain them, and somehow it seems more believable than this that tries to give an explanation. But also the loose, happy-go-lucky style of it, it's disconcerting to me. So I'm definitely following King of Nowhere to the end, and I think there's just one more issue to go. But it's not clicking for me as much as I would have hoped. Another one that I had to do a catch-up on was Firepower. And in fact, I just read issues 1 and 2. I have not read, although I own it, Volume 1 Prelude, which is about this guy's, I gather, is about this hero's training at some kind of, monastery where they teach Kung Fu type of place. And now in these issues, we see him 15 years later with a wife and children living in the suburbs. And I should be mostly looking at issue 2 since that's the one I'm really reviewing. Incredible, wonderful art, again by colorist Matt Wilson and by Chris Samney. But I'm just okay with the story. I wonder, they're trying to suck him back in to work with his cult or group of martial artists. And his wife knows about it, and she's a cop and everything. And this has a lot of nice touches. So I should mention, Robert Kirkman, the writer. But somehow I'm not caring a whole lot yet. And maybe I should admire the nice slow pace it takes to just show his real life and work up into it. And of course the incredible art that's used to envision what his real life looks like. But I'm somehow not clicking with these characters. I'm not caring. I kind of feel like I can predict what's going to happen. Maybe Kirkman will surprise me about the way things are going to go. But you have the wonderful family with the daughter and child and the dog, and something bad's going to happen to them that's going to suck him back in, right? I do sort of feel like Samney is like our modern David Mazzucchelli at this point, especially with these great colors. And so I'm definitely, as long as Samney's on this, I think I'm on it for the ride. I also noticed there's a lot of silent pages, and they're beautiful to look at, but I do have a problem with wordless comics. I read them too fast and then I miss too much. And it's hard to force myself to go back and look at each panel carefully. I take it in too fast. One of the good things about comics is, for me, is the little bit of dialogue here and there, or more than a little bit of dialogue, slows me down and makes me appreciate the art better. Of course, it's a balance. I was complaining last week about a Brian Michael Bendis comic that was just dialogue all over the place and didn't work with the art at all. But yeah, that's me, and what works for me in comics is definitely words and pictures. But this is great to look at, and I will be re-looking at it. And I think this is one that I definitely don't want to get in trades. I think it will be more fun getting monthly. The same as with Kirkman's Oblivion Song, which I'm enjoying a lot on a monthly basis. That one, it has sunk its hooks into me a lot, so maybe this will. But I think that one was more hooky right from the beginning. Or maybe I'll feel different when I finally backtrack and read this trade, which was an amazingly cool thing to do, a $9.99 trade as the opener. And clearly you don't have to read the trade. You can fill in. I didn't feel it all lost. But it's Chris Samney art, so I had to get it, of course. But so I admire Robert Kirkman for kind of his experiments in different ways of selling comics. And that kind of explains why I hadn't seen Chris Samney in a long time, because he was busy drawing this. So I've been forgetting to give you the numbers. Bad Mother was number 10, Undiscovered Country was number 9, and King of Nowhere was number 8, and then Firepower came in at number 7. So, and as I said, except for Bad Mother, I really had a good time reading all of these. And I didn't even have a bad time reading Bad Mother. I just kept waiting for me to care about it more. Okay, and then the biggest surprise of my week is my number 6 pick, Avengers of the Wasteland. And I was in a comic book store, not my regular one, and I saw this cover and I was drawn to it right away. And I only realized later, after I bought it, that the artist of where's the credits? Anyway, I already know that the cover artist is Juan Jose Ripe, one of my favorite artists. He recently had a exclusive with Valiant Comics, so I guess that's over. So maybe we'll see him at Marvel and DC. I'd actually like to see him at DC. I remember him doing 1 or 2 amazing comics at DC before he disappeared. So I saw this cover and I was like, whoa. I also like the idea of Wastelands, Apocalypse, Avengers of the Wasteland. I was intrigued. So, and the comic shop that I was at had all the previous issues. I don't normally jump on many Marvel comics, especially ones, there's endless Avengers side projects. But I couldn't resist this, and I read all 4 in a row, so it's kind of maybe cheating. Maybe if I'd been reading it monthly and got to this one, maybe I wouldn't say this individual issue was that great, but I think it was good. But there's several things I like about this, along with the covers. And one is the art. I've never heard of this artist before, Jonas Schraff. But he's a really good artist, and there's shades of Kirby and even Will Eisner, I feel like, in some of his ways of doing faces and figure work and everything. So, and then the colors were really good by a colorist whose name I haven't seen before, Neeraj Menon. And this takes place, I guess, in the world of Old Man Logan, and I don't know anything about it. I've never read Old Man Logan or any of Marvel's recent follow-ups on that, but it's like 60 years in the future. Doom and the other villains have turned America into a wasteland. They killed off the superheroes. Some new people have gained powers. There's this kind of son of Bruce Banner here who's Mini Hulk. He's kind of a small Hulk. And there's this daughter of Luke Cage who's taken on the mantle of Thor. There's an Ant-Man, a young Ant-Man. Anyway, it's a crazy, silly, pulpy comic that I'm really enjoying. It's kind of depressing, obviously, because the villains won and the world is a wasteland. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised because I did flip through it briefly at the store before I bought it. But my immediate expectation was that I wouldn't, some minor Marvel title, that I wouldn't really like the artwork in it much. Let's see. And Ed Brisson, the writer, he's doing fun stuff with the Marvel universe here, and has just the right touch with all the characters and the road trip and everything. He's just doing it really well. So that was my big surprise. I almost ranked it higher, but it was hard to decide where to rank things. Usually one of my problems with Marvel is maybe I want the Marvel comics from the 70s and 80s or even the 60s. But so maybe this kind of, in a sense, an Elseworld story or a alternate future story is easier for me to absorb, although usually I avoid those kinds of things because I just think they're going to be cheaply made. And so I was extremely pleasantly surprised by how well made that was. Okay, on to my number 5. It was Strange Adventures, continuing the story of questionable wartime behavior by Adam Strange and an investigation by Mr. Terrific. And I gotta say, it's weird. It bounced my emotions around. I was on the side of Adam Strange, then I was kind of suspicious of Adam Strange and the ruling people of the planet Rann. And I kind of thought Mr. Terrific and his investigation were questionable, and Mr. Terrific's methods and his attitude. So I almost wondered if he wants it to be bad. He wants to take this guy down. Anyway, also beautiful art. I think I liked the art of there's 2 artists on here, and you have to kind of guess who's who. But I think I liked the Evan Doc Shaner art best. The Gerards is a good artist too, and they both colored their own art, and the coloring on the Shaner artwork is really nice. And Shaner has pushed his artwork up to a more sophisticated level, so it's not as cartoony or Silver Age-ish as one usually expects from him, but it's very elegant and such. It's so weird to see ads in the middle of, especially in this extra expensive comic with cardboard, and it is weird to, in this story, I did not like Superman. I did not like the Green Lantern. They seemed, the whole situation is unpleasant and makes them all seem unpleasant to me. Then kind of a surprise just because I put Ice Cream Man at number 4, and usually Ice Cream Man is my number 1. And this was a good episode about the Ice Cream Man having taken over the lives of this family, and he's reading bedtime stories that are horrific variations on familiar bedtime stories to these kids, such as Goodnight Moon. Oh, sorry, I'm flipping it away too fast. Which is renamed to Goodnight You. And it starts, in the small padded room, there was a tissue box and a boy with a balloon and a picture of a girl heating up a spoon. It's really twisted, and it was quite good. But somehow, I think I was super excited, for their take on Dr. Seuss. But I did not enjoy the Dr. Seuss ones so much. It, again, was about taking drugs. So anyway, I guess I did like the one take on Goodnight Moon, and the one that was a take on the Giving Tree called The Loving Tree. Oops, all washed out. But it just didn't hit that highest note for me, or I just didn't enjoy it quite as much as some of the other comics. So coming in, another one that often is number 1 is Usagi Yojimbo. And I put it at number 3. And it was very, very good. And, reading it, I felt all along that Stan Sakai is such a master of making each of these rabbit people, or sometimes they're other animals, come alive, and I just really noticed how alive and what persons they were in this issue, and it was just a joy to read. But it seemed to go a little quickly to me. I think that was what my one negative was, like, oh, it's over already? So maybe that's a very unfair negative to me. This one is a to be continued story. What does it say here? Part 1 of 3. Wait. It's hard to read on the pink cover. Part 1 of 4. And I'm reading wearing my computer glasses, so if I hold it this far away, I can read it. So definitely looking forward to the rest of the story. It has its kind of wistful, emotional, nostalgic power to it as he returns to his home village. So there's no stopping Usagi Yojimbo. It is definitely one of the greatest comics currently being made. But I put 2 other comics ahead of it just because they thrilled me more this week. One of those that thrilled me in a weird way was Hedra. And I've complained just a moment ago about comics without words, and this is an entirely wordless comic. And my complaint stands. If there had been some words, I would have read it slower. Now, I suppose it would have been a completely different comic. This is quite literally an art comic. It's there for its visual, for what it does visually is most important, how it plays on the page. You could not read this digitally and get it this way. I mean, it's published in a magazine size. You'd have to have a very big tablet anyway, but it's just constantly at play with the page, and the meaning of the panel keeps changing, and the white lines that separate panels or separate other things are at play. And the artwork is beautiful. I hope it's by someone named Jesse Lonigan. I hope we'll be seeing more of Jesse Lonigan soon. I think he self-published this. Maybe there's mention of a newsprint version that he maybe sold at cons, and then Image offered, or he offered to them to publish it. But it's I need to reread it again. It's some kind of science fiction story where things kind of loop around together, and two different characters, an astronaut and this giant alien, kind of meet up and hook together. But it's really just all about the visual play, and that visual play is just incredible. So a not to be missed for people who like comics for the art, for the art of comics. So that was a delight. I don't know what else to say about it. And then my number one, kind of a surprise, and again, in my subjective way, I picked one that probably, from a critical point of view, shouldn't have been number one. It's good, but Hedra and Usagi and Ice Cream Man probably should have all come before it, above it. But I decided my favorite read of the week was The Dreaming, The Waking Hours, a new series spinning off from the other Sandman universe books, this time written by G. Willow Wilson. I've been meaning to read the regular Dreaming series, or get it in trades, written by Cy Spurrier, but I haven't gotten around to it. But this one delighted me in the way that Sandman comics at their best, when they were by Neil Gaiman, delighted me. We've got someone from the real world intersecting with the world of Dream, and we've got someone escaping out of Dream through her dreams, and what's going to come next. The story is rolling out, and it just has that wonderful feeling of story that Sandman at its best used to give us. Now, is it in some way maybe a pale imitation of stories that Neil Gaiman used to do? I don't know. Maybe that is. That thought crossed my mind. But I was just having so much fun reading it. And the artist, Nick Robles, is wonderful. And the colorist, Matt Lopez, this probably was my favorite coloring of the week. Just picks colors that I really like, and the colors really add to the story and add to the success of the art. So it's just a real perfect team of writer, artist, and colorist. And it doesn't hurt that it plays with Shakespeare and the whole question of who really wrote Shakespeare's plays, which I have read a book or two about, and I enjoy that kind of literary mystery about it. And so just altogether, a really fun read for me. And maybe I was glad it wasn't too heavy and too on the nose about current politics or anything like that. Because I have to say, even in the Avengers of the Wasteland, I kind of felt like Dr. Doom was a little bit like Donald Trump or something. I don't think the creators of that intended that, but I just had that feeling about it. Maybe in my fear of Donald Trump not accepting if he loses an election and that sort of thing. Sorry to go off on politics there. But I hope you all had a great comic book reading week. I'm just 2 days away from the next Wednesday. Hopefully I can keep the ball rolling and stay on my comic book countdown schedule. So I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.